Julian's such a great driver. Like, great job today driving. It's like, yeah, thanks. I was high. Hey, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Today, I wanted to talk about, well, first of all, I have this lisp going on because I have a palate expander. It's kind of gnarly. It's permanently up there in my upper jaw, so I kind of am talking funny, so you'll have to excuse that. I wanted to make a video just kind of documenting a story of mine, a specific kind of instance of weed abuse when I was a kid. God, it fucking sucks talking with this thing, but I'm not going to let it stop me because I want to talk about this. Particular weed instance happened when I was about a year and a half, or maybe it was 2.5 years into smoking weed. I was just at the age where I could drive with a permit. So I think, maybe state of New York, it was like 15 or 14 or something. But we drove out of state to visit my uncle in North Carolina, and he was a good 10 hours away, so I got a lot of hours in with my family practicing driving. And I brought weed with me to North Carolina so that I could smoke it while I was gone on this 4.5 day trip or whatever. What I remember most about this day was we used to go antique shopping. Like, that's something he liked to do, and you're not even shopping, just window shopping at these antique stores in these little towns that near him. And I had brought my it was a Pax, one of the earlier versions of the Pax, which is like a vaporizer for weed, for dry herb weed. And I brought it with me, and I hung back at one point when they were all, my family and my uncle were walking around in this one little town that we drove to. I hung back, and I had a little Coke can that hid the weed and the smell, and so that's how I was able to bring it in my backpack to on the trip with me, and then even on this day trip to this little town. And I paxed, I vaped. I got fucking stoned alone, which was crazy. I got high while they were all spending time together, and then they were like, Julian, you want to drive on the way back? They came back. I'm like, I have the thrill of being stoned and putting in eye drops and wondering if the smell is on me, and I have these plastic bags to hide the smell of the weed, and for the vape, so even the vape is totally sealed up now, and I timed it right, and it was just this total act, And then on top of that, I then, still learning to drive, I was a good driver at the time, but on top of that, I drove my family and my uncle back to his house while I was stoned. And the amount of kind of guilt I feel for that decision, not only the decision to drive high when I was still pretty inexperienced and young, but the decision to miss out on the experience of being with my family and my uncle, who's now passed, to smoke weed alone. It's not like I was on a trip with friends. I was just in the midst of this growing dependency on weed and smoking weed alone. And I couldn't imagine at the time going away for 4 or 5 days and not smoking. And, looking back on it, it's I'm not on some high horse, you should, every second with your family is what matters. Every kid, who wants to get away from their parents and their extended family and have alone time and be rebellious. That's normal. I don't think that's not normal, but it wasn't normal for me to think it was normal to bring this weed device with me, to bring weed with me across the states, and to just have this whole secret operation of getting high and no one knowing. You know, it's like almost the worst part of it is how secretive it was. How, oh, you know, Julian's such a great driver. Like, great job today driving. It's like, yeah, thanks. You know, I was high. I was high and I was hiding. You know, I was hiding who I am today and who I am these days with my mental state, and I'm not who you think I am, you know? Like, I feel guilt about how I, like, brought myself to make those decisions that day, and, like, the place I was in to do those things and to feel like it was somehow, like, normal. And I have regret, and I'm making this video to talk about it because I don't want to normalize these things in my head, because that really just leads me to going back to smoking, you know, and being like, yeah, it's normal to get high and do things while you're high and be with your family when you're high and choose getting high over being with your family. I had a lot of moments that I can remember like this, a lot of stories of getting stoned for regular ass moments in my life. And I just can't ever really come up with a good reason for why I did it, you know, except that I could and that it was what I was doing. I was smoking. That's part of what bothers me about it all so much too, is I just don't really. So, I don't know. Quick story about the habit and the power of habit and addiction with weed, and the feelings I have years later now, you know, 10 years later, of the regret. It sucks, but I like sort of have to remind myself and talk out loud about these things, about what it feels like to regret these things, because otherwise I sort of rewrite the narratives in my head, and that's sort of in the past what has led me just to start smoking again, to, you know, kind of talk to myself and tell myself that these things are not such a big deal. But I don't know, I think there's some value in making a big deal about them, because it's not normal to, you know, be 14, 15, 16 and be smoking weed every day and hiding it from your family and prioritizing that over your family. When you're in the moment, when you're in the habit, when you're in the abuse of it, it's really hard to look at yourself and what you're doing and say, this is weird, this is wrong. The power of hindsight is crazy. So I'm gonna keep not smoking for a while. I don't know how long. We'll see. As long as possible, maybe. Hope you're all doing well. Comment if you want to talk about your weed use. I'd love to hear from you. Take care. Peace.